Hello, everyone, and welcome to You Are Not Alone, a taste of Talk to the Entities. Welcome, everybody. Thank you all for showing up this morning.
Hi.
Hello. Hello. So, I am going to be talking and all of that, but this is also an interactive class. Talk to the Entities is a specialty class of Access Consciousness. So we use some of the Access Consciousness tools, and this work specifically looking at our communication, our clearing, our receiving, and our cooperation with the spirit world and with entities. So this is something that's going to be created with all of us. So your questions and your interaction are welcome and is actually part of creating what we're going to have here together today. I show up with information that I could be giving you, and depending on your questions, we could go an entirely different direction. So just wanting to let you guys know that. Why don't we start with, if you guys wouldn't mind, just saying your name and where you're from, or where you are right now.
Heather Smith in California.
Awesome. Thanks, Heather.
Wallen, Tucson.
Welcome, Abby from Tucson.
Hi, I'm Shumaila from Pakistan.
Hi, Shumaila. Thank you so much. And it was Shumaila and another person. I did an interview on Instagram Live, and we talked about putting this together, and she was one of the people that requested it. So thank you so much.
Yay.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I found you.
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy that you're here. I'm sorry, I have people who are still messaging about this technical snafu. Okay, wonderful. And then I know Suzanne is here, and she wrote into the chat that she is in Denmark. So welcome, ladies. So what questions do you guys have? If you can get anything out of this hour, what would it be?
So, Melanie, I have a question.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Regarding entity awareness, and what are the signs or sensations? Because I'm getting sensations in my body, and I ask a question, is this an entity? And it goes, yeah, but how do we change those into much, to have ease with them? Because I was getting an acid reflux, and that's not comfortable. I'd like a better sign, or I don't know what words to use here. So
Yeah,
I asked
absolutely.
for something like, can I could ask for maybe a word in my head, like that's what I asked for today. I asked the word entity be sent to my head, and that's how I would know, instead of having this discomfort in my body each time.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for the question. So yes, entity awareness shows up in a lot of ways. So it can show up through body sensations. It can show up through actually hearing voices in your head. It can also show up in ways that are very subtle through your thoughts, feelings, and emotions. So it can be showing up as depression or anxiety. It can be showing up as tickles or itchiness. Every single person has a different way of perceiving, right? And our bodies are one of the ways that we perceive our environment and the world around us. So sometimes it can be a bit intense and a little bit uncomfortable, especially if we are avoiding any of those awarenesses that we're having and we're not. Typically, entity awareness can also be very subtle, right? Like a whisper. But usually we either don't have the information that is actually something, then that could possibly be entity awareness, and we ignore it. And so the entities tend to turn the volume up. So if you are recognize, if you already have this information and you are experiencing something and you're going, all right, this is one of the ways I am perceiving entities, and it's pretty uncomfortable. What if, just like you did, what if you could just ask the question, what would it, hey guys, what would it take for you to show me this in a way that's easier for me to get it? And also just asking your body, how can you make me aware of my entity awareness? How can you show me this is entity awareness in a way that I have more ease with, right? Rather than necessarily setting up the way you would really like it to show up or controlling it in that way. Because entity awareness also, it asks us to really relax and let go of those controls. But you can request, what would it take for this to show up with more ease? The thing about that is that when you do get a subtlety of awareness, you want to pay attention and ask, is this an entity or is this something else? And then all of this is like a big experiment. You really just have to be curious, right? And play with it, see if that works. If it doesn't, try something different, try something new. It's like, what would it take for your entity awareness to show up in a way that's joyful and you have more ease with? So ask and you shall receive really does work with all of this. Is that helpful?
That's perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. You're welcome. You're welcome. So truly, what if we are never alone? And it's always interesting for me to have this conversation because for most of my life, I was one of those people where I always talked to the invisible people around me. It was very much a natural part of my world. Like the trees were a piece of furniture, were the people with bodies in my household. And it wasn't until I started getting older and then I started to hide that from the people around me, realizing, wow, this is pretty different. And even when I tried to shut down this capacity to perceive the unseen world around me, it was something that I still fell into during times when I really needed, quote, someone to talk to. And when I tried to shut it off, it was still something that I relied on and I leaned into and believed in, even though I didn't really want to sort of deal with it. So there are every type of entity in the world, right? Every type of energy. So what's an entity? An entity is anything with a definition, right? Like we are entities, but we are entities that have these incredible bodies that we get to function with in the world. An entity can also be a painting or a book or anything that has that definition of life form, right? So one of the misconceptions that we have about entities in the spirit world is that every single entity out there, once you've left your body, and if it doesn't have a physical body, that it's somehow more aware than us. But one of the biggest aha moments for me in first listening to the founder of Talk to the Entity, Shannon O'Hara, was when she said that the entities and ghosts and spirits that are walking around the world that used to have bodies and no longer do, they're not any more aware than we are. They're not more aware than the people with bodies walking around the world. So imagine you've got New York City. You've got every level of consciousness that there is, every level of awareness there is, and every level of malevolence or benevolence, right? It all exists. So anywhere. So I'm not going to go there just yet. So how do you know? How do you know what you are dealing with? Well, when you're walking around the world, how do you know what kind of person that you're dealing with, right? Your perception and your engagement with people with bodies is going to be very, very similar as those without bodies, right? But you are going to have to really know what you know and really relax into perceiving these communications and your awarenesses of it very differently. But what if your engagement is not necessarily going to be that different? So how do you know when you're dealing with a person who may not have a really wonderful intention with you, right? More malevolent intent, kind of a trickster. They've got their own agenda that they're trying to fulfill through you, right? How do you know? We get a subtlety of awareness, right? And in my access consciousness work, we talk a lot about really acknowledging what you are aware of and trusting it, right? Trusting what you know. And one of the ways that we do this is through a tool called heavy and light. So what if what is true for you will feel light and heavy, feel light and expansive? And what if what isn't true will feel heavier and more contracted? So what if this is one of the ways you also navigate the spirit world, right? So when you are aware of something, oh, you're having what we talked about a little bit ago, an entity awareness that can show up through a thought, feeling, emotion, a sensation with your body. You can ask, is this an entity or is this something else? What's lighter? And if it lightens up or expands or gives you a sense of relaxation or spaciousness at all, then go with that. So you go, okay, this is an entity. Cool. Just acknowledging what you are aware of is going to create more ease with that awareness. All right. Even if you don't have any other talk to the entity or any other tool, when you acknowledge what it is that you know, it will lighten up whatever that is. Right. So let's say you would like to connect more with your teammates. So people call them spirit guides, they call them lots of things. In the talk to the entities work, we call them teammates. And those that are there to contribute to you and whatever you're creating and whatever you're choosing, right? So let's say you'd like to connect with them more. When I connect with my teammates, there is a sense of relaxation. There is a sense of expansiveness. But I will say, when I first started out, I had so many misconceptions and I had so many sort of other metaphysical points of views and also lies and misconceptions that I'd picked up through watching a lot of really scary movies. Like, it was always an area of curiosity for me. But what you mostly find out in the world, especially when I was growing up, was horror movies, right? When we are powerless against these unseen forces that are so powerful. So even connecting to these benevolent beings that really were there to have my back and be there with me throughout my life, contributing to me and supporting everything, which we all have. I had all of these walls and barriers up that would throw up these distractors of fear and doubt and worry and shrinking and powerlessness, even when I was approached with a being that was truly there for me. So I'm going to use something called an access clearing statement. And it's a bunch of words that basically go in and help remove the limitations and the lies that we've bought throughout our lifetime, right? And it's right or wrong, good or bad, pot and pock, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds. And if you want a more in-depth, journey into that, you can go to theclearingstatement.com and get more information. But I'm just going to go ahead and use it to help start to move some of those old beliefs and points of views. And this is a part of access consciousness and also a part of talk to the entities. And I think that it's important for us to go ahead and get some scoops on these fears and this energy that we have that creates these walls and barriers, so that in this time we have together today, you can begin to get an experience of what it would be like to receive and truly know. And there are beings that really have your back. And for me, this is one of the ways that I feel and that really empowers me to be able to go forth, interact, and engage with every other type of energy that's out there that we discover when we are super, super aware of the spirit and the entity world. So all of the lies that you have bought, all of the jails, all the judgments, agendas, inventions, and lies that have been impelled on you throughout every lifetime against your awareness of the spirit and entity world, will you please destroy and uncreate all of that? It's basically we're pulling all of our energy, our creative energy out of feeling that any longer. Yes? Thank you. Right and wrong, good and bad, pot and pock, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds. Cool. Now you don't have to know how that works. Just notice if it begins to lighten up your world at all. And I might throw in a few more clearings as we have a conversation and as we are talking. It's going to bring up an energy or that charge, and I'll notice those places, and you'll notice those spaces where we get a little bit sticky, and will help get us a bit more unstuck. So let's just take a moment and do an exercise together. So I want you to feel your feet on the floor, your butt in the seat. You can close your eyes if you'd like to, but you don't have to. And I would like for you to just soften the edges around you. And we're talking about a big subject, and we're having a little taste of it. So just be aware. Your awareness is going to be a lot more than what we're able to address today. But what would it take for you to have ease with all of that? And go ahead and just notice the outside edges of you, and go ahead and expand out. Expand your awareness to the size of the room that you're in. And a lot of you are already going way further. So just keep expanding out and getting bigger, bigger, bigger until you perceive your body begin to relax even more. And relaxing and expanding, relaxing and expanding. And any barriers that you may start perceiving around you, any walls to perceiving you may have put up because you're aware of so much you had no tools or information to be able to deal with until now. And pushing down and melting down those barriers. And I would like for you to ask all of the entities that have shown up here with you, maybe entities and spirits that have been trying to get your attention for some time. Tell them, relax. And ask them all to step back and step to the far edges of the building that you're in or the room that you're in. And you are the being with the body. This is the energy, space, and consciousness of you. And you get to ask for this and receive it. And they need to listen because you are the dominant energy. And now as they're all stepping back, and I'm just, for all of them, I'm letting them know, and for you to acknowledge that you are aware of them and that you're here to learn how to communicate and clear and receive and cooperate with them, but for them to be patient and give you space. And lowering and dropping any barriers that may have come up. And remember, this is new, and for a lot of us, and for a lot of you, this may be a totally new and different experience, and be patient with you and realize that your walls and barriers may shoot up, and that's okay. Just relax those down. What if you are safe? And we are all here together. And what if you don't have to deal with this alone anymore? Whatever it is that you may have been experiencing maybe for quite some time. And now, will you please ask for your teammates to begin to step toward you? Just your teammates. And just notice as they move toward you, the sensations in your body. Notice what comes up for you. Is there a sense of melty relaxation, or is there some hesitancy? All of it's okay. And as they get closer, I'm relaxing even more. As we relax, we're able to perceive more and receive more. And for those of you where you would like to do this, do the next part. For those of you where you're like, okay, cool, this is enough. This is great. Allow them to just be closer and more present with you, and you more present with them than you're normally used to. And let them get closer and closer bit by bit, and let yourself relax into it even more. And for those of you who would like to take it a step further, allow them to get really close. Allow them to touch you. Allow them to touch your energy bodies. Allow them to touch your physical body. And just dropping your barriers and relaxing even more. And just allow yourself to be present and just notice the space. Notice the energies. You may not notice them individually, and maybe you will. And allow each one of them, or maybe right now it's just one, allow them to show themselves to you even more in whatever way you perceive that. And for those of you who'd like to go a little further, let them get very, very close, like cuddling up with you. And relaxing and perceiving. And this is an exercise that you can do at any time so that you get even more familiar with perceiving the difference in the energy of entities that have come to you for something, that have come to be cleared or would like to communicate or give something to you or receive something from you or to cooperate. Because these are the 4 things that we do and talk to the entities. It's the 4 things that we do. We clear, communicate, we receive, and we cooperate. And there's a whole world of how we get to engage with the spirit world through those things. So for me, it's been really valuable to do this exercise, to ask all of the other entities to step back and just have my teammates come into my space so that I get more and more familiar with when I perceive someone step forward, I perceive an entity around me. And that it's easier and easier for me to be able to distinguish. And you can also ask the question, is this a teammate or someone else? But as you practice this and you get more familiar, these are also times when you can communicate with your teammates and ask for their contribution and support. Awesome. So now allow the other entities in the room to just step a little bit closer. They don't need to get too close, but allow them to step a little closer and see if you perceive a difference in the quality of energy, or however you perceive that. Is it a little bit different? And again, the more that you practice these energetic exercises, the more you are fine-tuning your perceptions, right? And for some of us, we don't necessarily perceive a definition of the subtleties of energy. We just know. We just know, oh, there are my teammates. Oh, there's a different entity. So don't discount it just because you know without feeling something. Okay. So I wanted to share with you a couple of ways that the spirit world has really stepped up for me. And then I want to open it up and hear more from you in some of the specific questions that you have in regards to all of this. So back in 2016, in the United States, in North Dakota, there were protests. There were water protectors and protests going on in North Dakota. And there was Homeland Security on the other side and private police, and there was a big clash. And I was really watching this. And so I showed up to contribute what I could with a hands-on process called access bars that helps relieve trauma. I wanted to show up and contribute because there have been some clashes in the protests and on this particular bridge where the private police had pulled out water cannons and rubber bullets and all of these different things. And so there was a lot of intensive energy, and I wanted to see what was going on myself. And so I showed up, and I was able to contribute and run bars on people and work with the Native Americans because this was happening on a reservation out at Standing Rock. So in the midst of this being there, and they had what they called a silent meditation. And every time anyone went out on that bridge, on the other side of it was razor wire and gigantic tanks with water cannons and people with what looked like machine guns with rubber bullets standing across on a loudspeaker, basically saying, if anyone comes on this bridge, basically enter at your own risk. So they had organized this women's meditation, silent meditation for peaceful protest, and I was part of it. And as we moved further and further on this bridge, kind of face to face with all of this, it's a lot of very intensive energy. And I'm walking out with this group of people, and my body's getting more and more intense and more intense. And as I stood there, I felt one at a time these hands. And it's still so touching because how often in our lives do we truly have people show up that have our back totally? And I felt the presence of someone on my team that had been there for years, this big Native American man. And I hadn't felt him around me for many years. And all of a sudden he was silently there with a hand on my back. And then there was someone from my childhood, Native American man also happened to be, who also was there. And there were these huge, magnificent presences. And they were this space of total safety and total ease. And there was no judgment about anyone on the other side of that bridge and anyone on this side of the bridge. And they stood there with me, and I could perceive my energy expand with them. And it was such an incredible gift. And it was the first time that I truly had this palpable experience of, oh, wow, I'm truly not alone. And there are beings and spirits in this world that are here to stand joyfully with me and contribute to me having ease doing some of these things that we are required to do sometimes in our world to create the change that we know is possible. So that was the first time. And then actually this is kind of a funny example, but I put a post up on Facebook a couple of months ago, really inviting people to be in the question with vaccines and all this sort of stuff going on in the world right now. And it wasn't pro or against, it was really about inviting choice. And it brought up such intensive energy for people. And there was a lot of projection and anger impelled in my direction. And for me, I was choosing to be what we call an access allowance, to be interesting point of view and just receive it, right? Just allow it to contribute. And it was the first time that I consciously, with awareness, said, I could really use your support, speaking to my team. And I could probably feel them step forward and put their hands on my back. And for me, that's one of the ways that it shows up, is I can feel them touching my back. And earlier in my life, this would have brought up a lot because, and I'll can go back to that earlier in my life, I had them touching me and I was super freaked out because I had no idea what it was. And I felt like I was being tormented and I didn't have any tools. So for me to actually allow them to step forward and contribute in this way and actually allow me to know that they're there through this physical touch was new. And it really contributed, and they helped me expand and helped me to be that space of receiving. That was a real challenge, but they were there and contributing. So what can we be asking for and what can we be receiving? from the spirit world and from our teammates and the spirits and beings of light that are there to contribute and be with us and support us in whatever we are choosing. And what if they can show up for us in the mundane and the things that maybe for each of us personally we never talk about, that we can invite them into, right? Because some of these things that we have to face in our own lives, for some people might seem little or insignificant, but for us, sometimes seem insurmountable. So what if you can actually tap into and utilize this unseen support that each one of us and each one of you has it. Each one of you, it is available. Okay. Cool. So, does anyone have a comment or a question? I think you are muted. Pavali.
Hi.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah. Actually, I want to ask you one question. Can we see the entities by naked eyes?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Can we see the entities with our naked eyes?
With your naked, for some people, their entity awareness shows up visually. So the creator and founder of the Talk to the Entities tools, Shannon O'Hara, she is someone who sees them. So when she grew up, her father, who is the founder of Access Consciousness, Gary Douglas, he's a collector of antiques. And so the way that he actually discovered she was having this awareness was he brought home a dresser, and she was so frustrated because she kept seeing this old woman sitting on top of it. And finally, she asked her dad, "Who is that old woman sitting on that dresser?" And thank goodness for her and the rest of us, he was willing to ask a question. And he went, "Well, what do you see? What are you aware of there?" And he began working with her entity awareness. And that thus begins the very, very beginning of Talk to the Entities. So yes, for some people, it does show up visually. But I would like to add, I hear from people a lot in Talk to the Entities classes, believing that if they're not seeing them with their naked eye, then they are somehow less aware. You can have an intensive and inclusive awareness of entities in many, many ways. You do not have to see them with your naked eye. It's not a better entity awareness. It's just one of the many. Thank you, Ashwin, for that question. But some of you may have noticed, have you ever seen them, like a shadow or something like move out of the corner of your eye? Or it seemed like someone went around a corner, that, what if that is also your entity awareness? For me personally, I spent a lot of times as a child under the covers because I was terrified of the dark. Really, I was super aware of entities. There were beings in the dark attempting to get my attention. So I spent a lot of times under the covers chanting to myself, "I don't want to see them. I don't want to see them. I don't want to see them." So for a lot of us, we may have the capacity to perceive visually, but we may have shut that off because of, hearing somebody tell a frightening story of something that they saw or something we've seen on television, or what we've chosen. So what would it take? So what energy, space, and consciousness and choice, magic, miracle, mystery, and possibility can each one of us be to open to our knowing, being, perceiving, and receiving of our entity awareness with total ease? And anything that doesn't allow you for that to show up for you with greater ease, and even playfulness and fun, will you destroy and create and let go of all that? Right, wrong, good, bad, pod, poc, all name, short, boys, and beyonds. Thank you, Ashwin. Pavali,
And
did you
what
have?
can we,
Oh,
yeah,
go ahead.
sorry. Yeah. How can we develop such an ability to see the entities with our naked eyes? And second question is mine, like, what does the access tell about the gods and goddesses of the which we believe in Hinduism, especially Mahakali? Because
Okay,
I have
cool.
heard from many years facilitator that even Gary believes in the Mahakali.
Cool. Thank
So,
you for the question.
are
So,
they entities?
so I'm I'm going to touch on a little bit of that. This is just a taste of talk to the entities. So I'll be able to, there's some conversations that are a little bit more in the realm of the 2.5-day class, where we really dive in to looking at all of this in much more depth and detail, and playing with it. But just like all of Access Consciousness, this is about empowering you to know what you know, right? So what if you could also get into the question with that? Is it sounds like maybe you have more of the Access Consciousness tools already, and really begin to play with it and ask those energies to communicate with you and show you who and what they are. So first, developing seeing entities. So what if a different question might be, how does entity awareness show up for me? What if you begin with that? What if you begin just with developing your how you sense? Because what if there's a way of perceiving that's greater than visual, right? What if? So, and you can ask, like, what would it take for me to see you guys? Like, show yourself. What would it take? Right? Begin the question with it. And Ashwin, how do you perceive entities? What do you know about perceiving them that maybe isn't like anyone else on the planet? And what an adventure it might be for you to really ask that question. Right? And there are, like in India, right? Are you in India? Yes. So there are lots and lots of energies given to entities, deities, and beings, right? So what if we're part of giving them life, right? There are lots of beings out there, you know, so what if you can interact and play with lots and lots of energies? The thing that we ask in the talk to the entities work is, what if they're not greater than you? What if it isn't about looking to them for what they know to tell you, but what can they empower you to know? What can they empower you to be? And what can they contribute to you having and being and generating and creating? And in the 2.5-day, we also go into cooperating. Like, are they beings we can cooperate with to create greater consciousness in the world? So we can kind of, so that is a bigger conversation, but those are some of the conversations that we do have in the Talk to the Entities work. So thank you for your questions, Ashwin. Yeah.
It's my pleasure.
Is there anyone else you'd like to unmute? Pavali, I see you waving your hand. Are you able to unmute?
Yeah. So, first question is how to evoke them, how to be with an ease with them, or how to feel them.
How to be in what with them?
Yeah, how to be, with ease with them if
Oh,
they
having
are
ease with
around.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So were you here for the exercise that we did? So what did you notice in that exercise? Were you able to perceive entities around you?
Yes, I was, and I was having fear and little rejection.
Mm-hmm. So yes, that shows up for a lot of people. You're not alone in that. So let me ask you a question. So in Access, in Talk to the Entities, we have a tool. Who does this belong to? So what if 98% of all of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions don't belong to you? It's your awareness of the world around you, which includes entities. So these fears and those rejections, are those yours? Or do they actually belong to someone else, that you picked that up from someone else? And just notice which is it light? Does it belong to you, or does it belong to someone else? Which is lighter? What do you get?
It doesn't belong to me. Yes, I can be with ease. Yes.
Cool.
And this is super.
So returning all that to sender with consciousness attached. Like for those of you maybe have never heard that tool before, because we are so aware. right? We're not only aware of the spirit world, but we are aware of all of the thoughts, feelings, and emotions of the world around us. And we've picked up a lot of things that don't belong to us, and we've made it into our own. And that's where a lot of our fears and those misconceptions and some of those barriers, and like you were saying, those rejections come from. Sometimes they don't even belong to you. So, and that's another question and tool for your toolbox in terms of that. So how much fun can you have? What if you just kept, so did you have to evoke the entities, or did we just ask to be aware of them? Right? So what if
Just
they're
be
there
aware.
all the time? Right? It's like, what if you could just play with it? What if you could, my glasses, what if you could just keep doing that exercise? And when you notice those fears coming up of rejection, because that's going to be a habit, right, that you have, like you're really worked that muscle quite a bit. So just what if you kept doing that exercise? Ask them all to step back, and your teammates to, sometimes it's easier to do it with your teammates because they have a vibration that's really there to contributing gift to you, right? And just notice as they move closer to you, when you have that come up and you want to press those barriers down and you notice this, whoa, you can ask, who does that belong to? Is that mine or someone else's? Someone else's. Cool. Return to sender. Relax, drop those barriers and allow them to get closer. And just if you did that every day for a week, I wonder if you may have more ease. Cool. And if you do it, write me and let me know how it is. I'm really curious. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Is anyone else? Oh, I think I saw someone in the chat. Cool. Heather had to hop off. Awesome. Thank you. Does anyone else have a question or a comment? And gonna ask anything.
Do you have WhatsApp group so that we can join it?
I don't have a WhatsApp group right now. Do you use Telegram?
Yeah.
I'll create a Telegram like group and I'll send it to you guys. Okay.
And if we join the talk to the entity class with you, I'm from India, so we will get the Indian price only, no?
Yes, there is a country pricing.
Okay.
Yeah, so
And
in access, when you take one of these kind of bigger classes, there's pricing based on the country that you live in. So yes.
so we will get the recording of the classes also?
Yes, that's correct. You'll
Yeah,
also get a
okay.
recording of today, and then any introduction or 2.5-day talk to the entities. It is all recorded.
Okay.
Yes, thank you for
So
that.
yeah, and we get it on our email, right?
That's right.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
the email that you registered with is the email that you'll receive it through. Awesome, thank you. Does anyone else have a comment or a question or curiosity?
Yeah, I wanna thank you, Melanie, for this call. It has brought a lot of clarity with how I can go about uh, connecting with the teammates every day. Yeah, I haven't done that. That brought a lot of clarity and ease for me with perceiving the entities. Thank you.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. I'm so glad to hear that. How does it get better than that? Like, what else is really possible when we include the spirit world in all of our awareness? And the thing is, we don't actually get to turn off that awareness, right? So for some of us, like for many, many years, I attempted because I really didn't want to deal with it, to be honest. Yeah, that's really funny. That's really funny to say, but I really avoided. I took access classes for probably 7 years, 6 or 7 years before I ever took a talk to the entities class. So what if the spirit kingdom, the spirit world, is just as real as bacteria. So that's one of the things that I really love Shannon talking about. A lot of people think of the spirit world as like, oh, this is woo-woo or metaphysical or whatever, but we didn't see bacteria for ages on this planet. Was it influencing us? Was it affecting our lives? Yes, it was. Did we know it was there? No, we didn't. Could we see it? No, we couldn't. Yet it was impacting us. What if that's very similar with the spirit world? What if it's there and we're interacting with it all the time? Whether we are aware it's there or acknowledging it's there or not. And wouldn't it be interesting in another 10, 20, 50, 100 years if we have the fungi kingdom, the bacterial kingdom, and we've got the spirit kingdom actually on, our mainstream scientific, we've proven it has existed, right? So awesome. So one of the things that, was someone going to ask something? I feel like somebody's got something there that they want to bring up. And I'm also looking at the chat if there is anyone who isn't able to talk, but you can make a comment or a question in the chat. I am looking at that now. So one of the things that we go into in the 2.5 day, and then also sometimes in the 2-hour introduction class, is, so we've acknowledged we're aware of entities. Cool. Is this an entity or something else? It's an entity. Now what? Right? One of the things we have in the 2.5 day class is a flowchart, a communication flowchart. So that basically when you ask, are you here to communicate? Are you here to clear? Let's say communicate, you get, yes, you're here to communicate. There's a flowchart of different questions you can ask that leads to other things, which is so helpful. We go into the different types of entities, spirits, beings, elemental spirits of the earth. We go into smoke entities and drug and alcohol entities, and how do we clear them? So it's not right to clear an entity, and it's not wrong to clear or not to clear an entity. Some of them would like to hang out. But frankly, a lot of the beings, at least the ones that used to be humans, some of them don't actually know that they don't have a body anymore. So sometimes, even if you just say, if you're noticing someone hanging around, cautious entities around a lot, one of the things you can just ask them right away is, do you know that you don't have a body anymore? And honestly, 50% of the time, you say, do you know you don't have a body? They go, what? They become aware. Notice it's a question. Questions always empower. And even with our work with entities and talk to the entities, when we clear, we are actually asking questions that are empowering them and giving them choice to stay or choice to move on, go get another body or move on to whatever is next, right? So you can also just begin with, if you're noticing entities around you, do you know you don't have a body anymore? And sometimes they'll just, they're gone once they realize. And why? We have no idea. How is it that they, pass away? They lose their body, their bodies passes away and they don't know. It seems that time and space works differently for entities and spirits in the spirit world, right? So that's one thing that you can ask. And there's lots of interactions. And so in the Talk to Entities beginning, we talk about also the, so I mentioned spirits of the earth. Now there are entities like native spirits. So Aboriginal people in Australia, Native Americans in the United States, Indigenous people in Canada. We've got them all over the place, right? Oftentimes these particular beings, their paradigm, their worldview is that they are part of the earth and the earth is part of them. So when they let go of their bodies, a lot of times they will stay because they are still connected to the earth, and that way they like to contribute, or they feel like they are protecting. There are lots of different reasons why spirits show up, and one of the reasons that we and talk entities don't say, when you have this entity, it's exactly like this, because we must ask questions, because it's different every single time, right? If we look at every single one of us on this call today, we have a very different intention of even being here on this call and why we showed up, right? So there's not one answer, that's gonna be, for each one of us. We've got to address our interactions with entities as we do with people. It's different every single time. So that's the beauty of having this toolbox full of questions and processes and ways we can deal with it. So if you are on this, you likely have a very strong awareness of the spirit and entity world. And maybe right now you might even believe it's just a curiosity, but likely you're curious because it's a capacity. And this capacity, so for me, this capacity has been both a gift and a challenge, because for me, when I do not acknowledge my awareness of the entity world, I'm one of those people that feels like they're going crazy. And if I had told people growing as a teenager and a young adult, or even now, what it is I'm perceiving, they would open their DSM, which is the little manual psychotherapists and psychologists have to put you into the box of defined wrongness, right? They would have definitely labeled me lots of different things. So what if some of the mental illnesses that are out there, like if you tell a therapist that you're hearing voices, it's a very rare therapist that's going to say, do you think you might be aware of entities? Do you think you may have a capacity perceiving the spirit world? That doesn't happen very often. Luckily, I do know a few therapists that do have this information, and they are able to empower people with this rather than disempower with a quote diagnosis. So for me, if I don't use my tools and engage and interact with what I know, and my awareness of the spirit world, it makes my life hard. It makes difficult. It makes my body even hurt, right? And if you're on here, you likely have quite a large capacity for this. So for me, I heard voices a lot in my life. I also was very, very aware of suicidal thoughts, and because there are a lot of beings out there that are walking around kind of dazed and confused that took their own life, right? Not a wrongness. It just is. So I was very keyed in to the thoughts and the feelings and the emotions. So what if you are, just like you are aware of people with bodies, their thoughts, feelings, and emotions that live around you? What if you are also perceiving in your own body? Because our awareness shows up through our body, in our own words, in our own voices in our head, through our emotions and sensations. What if it's the same with the spirit world and those entities that are around us? So when I facilitate entities, right, when I do the clearing and I'm asking them questions and contributing to them, I often will be getting a download of thoughts, feelings, and emotions that give me information about how to facilitate them, right? Because they don't talk to us necessarily like we are able to be doing verbally in this way. Because we're not only communicating like this, where you see me on the screen and you hear my voice. There's a bunch of other energies, like our energies, our spaces, our consciousness are connected, right? What if we're all infinite beings? So there's a lot of also nonverbal communication that's going on with us right now. And it's very, very much the same with the spirit and entity world. And for me, a lot of the things I was judging and thought was so wrong with me and I was struggling with in my life turned out to be awareness of people with bodies, and also a whole lot of awareness of people without bodies. And it was, I have not had another thought to end my own life after I took my first talk to the entities class. It was the first place I was actually even willing to talk about it, right? Because it was awareness. So how much of the intensities in your life mental intensities, emotional intensities, physical intensities, energetic intensities have you misapplied as your own and a wrongness, when it was in fact your awareness and a capacity and a strongness? And anything that doesn't allow you to actually receive that strongness of this capacity. And so everything you did by as yours when it wasn't, will you please return that to sender with consciousness attached? Right, wrong, good, bad, pon, pock, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds, and everywhere else, everything else you created out of that and made real for you, everywhere you aligned and agreed with it, or you resisted and reacted to it that locked it in your world, will you dissipate and release and destroy and uncreate all of that? Right, wrong, good, bad, pon and pock, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds. Some of the most beautiful moments have come facilitating entities for me. Some of the most tangible gratitude in a facilitation has come from spirits and ghosts. And it's difficult to put into words until you sort of step into it yourself and you're like, wow, this is real. And what a gift you are when you are willing to acknowledge, communicate, clear, receive, and cooperate, because there are so few on the planet that do. So what gift are you to the spirit world? And what gift can you now be in your willingness to know, be, perceive, and receive more? Yeah. What gift are you? And what gift have you always been that you have not acknowledged? Well, so if you would like to learn more, if you would like, and this always at the end feels like a sell, it isn't a sell, it's really an invitation. So if you would like to really dive in to really learning about the clearing and cooperating and receiving and receiving with the spirit world, and getting a toolbox for being able to kind of deal with, contribute to, and receive from entities, from the ones that people most want to avoid, and you having greater ease with that, right? What if you can actually have ease with every type of entity out there? So I did want to touch on this. Like I said at the beginning, there are as many different types of entities out there as there are people. And there are people out there who are more malevolent and would like to cause harm, right? Now, they're not really able to do that if you're not a part of cooperating with that, right? So with all of these talk to the entities tools, all of it empowers you to truly be an energy space and a consciousness that is not affected and not impacted in a way that is disempowering to you. So for me, I was very much also aware of these types of entities. And in Access, we call them demons. And demons are just entities with the job to disempower you, right? But they kind of know what to say and what to do to really kind of frighten you and freak you out. But they have no power over you unless you give it to them, right? And as I've been working and stretching my own muscle of awareness and working with every single type of entity out there, what I am noticing is I used to have this initial reaction, like, Pallavi, I'm sorry, I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly.
Pallavi.
Pallavi, thank you. Talked about like that fear that comes up when the entities get close. So that used to happen quite a lot. And I was still afraid that I'd walk through the dark and I could perceive them around me and it would come up and I would notice myself contracting. And through these talk to the entities tools and all these interactions, I've been able to stop in those moments and go, no, like, no one and nothing is greater than me, and expanding my energy and expanding my space and being more powerful. So what's interesting is that I've noticed over the last couple of years playing with this and making these different choices with all of these different energies, and some of them were less intense, but still were like, my initial reaction was like, ooh, what if that's not wrong? What if you can still go, ooh, and oh, right, what is this? Is this an entity or something else? Right? So what I'm noticing is the more that I've done that and the more that I've gone, all right, cool, dropping my barriers, expanding out, or even in that moment going, actually, I don't have the bandwidth to deal with this right now. I need you to leave. And I will do office hours, which is basically making time to communicate, clear, receive, and cooperate with entities. Basically utilize your capacities every day, or as often as you would like to. You make space for it. That way you tell these guys, if they're tapping on your shoulder, hey, all right, you know what, I need to sleep right now, or I'm busy doing something else. You can come back during office hours. The time is this time to this time. They will show up. I don't know how they know how to tell time, but I've forgotten my office hours. And then all of a sudden felt really weird and like itchy on my face and like my nose, and I've been sneezing or something. And I'm like, what is going on? I feel so intense. Why does everything feel so fuzzy? And I look at the clock and I'm like, oh, I'm 15 minutes late for my office hours. Everyone showed up but me. So they will show up when you put that out there. So what I'm noticing is with this practice for me of using all of these tools and really engaging with it, partly because I was feeling very crazy when I didn't. Honestly, the reason I chose it was because I was so uncomfortable. I admit that. It wasn't just out of the generosity of what contribution we can be and gift we can be to the entity world. I thought, well, that's really nice. But the real reason I chose it was because it's the way I keep my sanity, because I'm just too aware of the entity world not to. I have a choice. The choice for me is shut myself down into a little tiny ball to try to get away from the awareness and feel like crap and crazy head, or actually be the power and the potency that I am and be empowered around all this and actually show up and be it, right? And what I'm noticing now is when I'm walking through the dark, I actually noted it the other day, I'm walking through the dark and I'm willing to be, I can even perceive furniture around me more because I'm just willing to occupy more space with my energy, space and consciousness and awareness. And noticing when I perceive the entities, I was like, hi, hey, hi, hey. And there wasn't the contraction. I went, wow, this is really different. This is really different. In the face of these intensities, I'm not shrinking. I am expanding. And the only reason that that is happening is because I've been practicing, because I've done the other one so many times and had to get patient with myself and be like, this is gonna come up. Don't let it detour me. Just keep choosing and just keep going. And now I'm like, wow, whew, there is so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. There's so, and I say this because it's not unique to me, right? This is true for each one of us. If you choose to use the tools and you choose to keep going and not give up, you will have greater ease and more empowerment. And what I'm also noticing is that I think I was more afraid of people than I was the entity world, to be honest. So now what I'm noticing too is where I used to shrink with people, because I've been doing it with entities in the spirit world, it's generalizing into my life with people. And I'm able to be more aware of where people are functioning from, right? We don't always want to be aware of the crap people function from, but living as total awareness, we know all of it. We don't have to judge it. We don't have to do anything with it, but we are aware of it. So acknowledging that awareness. So my work with the entity world is generalizing and creating greater ease, greater awareness, and greater empowerment, not only with the spirit world, but with all of the world and all beings with bodies, and without. So if this sounds like an adventure you would like to play more with, I'm putting a talk to the entity 2.5 day on the schedule for the beginning of September. And those dates, so it's over Labor Day weekend, which is a holiday in the United States, September 3rd, 4th, and 5th. What I'm looking at right now, if there are those of us who want to join from India or Pakistan, you know, there's a pretty big time difference. I know right now it's probably almost, what is it? Almost midnight, somewhere around that.
Midnight.
It is midnight.
12 a.m.
Yes. So talk to the entities classes are usually 2.5 days. An evening, and so it'll be like Friday evening, 5 hours on Saturday, 5 hours on Sunday. So I'm looking at some different ways to be able to organize it. So in that, if those of you would like to join, we have a time that works that isn't just in the middle of the night for you. So I will send out some options in the follow-up email, which will have this recording. Is there anything else I was going to include in that recording? The recording, and then also the information about if you would like to join for the 2.5 day. Because I can also spread it out over 4 days, doing 3 hours every morning, but I know some people work. So let's continue this conversation. I was going to create a Telegram thread for people who are interested in talking about talk to the entities, engaging in that way, and also who would be interested in the 2.5 day. So let's get in there, and for those of you who are really interested, we will figure out a time. I have options. We've got telecall options, which would be Zoom like this, you know, an hour and a half and a 3 hours a day. We got options. We get to create it how it works for us. How does it get better than that? So I'll put some options out there, and you guys just let me know, what can I contribute to you? What can all of the talk to the entities contribute to you? What can the spirit world and the beings of light, which we also go into a bit in that class, those mega beings, what can all energies contribute to you living your greatest life of awareness and having ease with it, right? Because nobody, at least for me, no one had ever been talking about any of this stuff, especially not in a way that didn't have the significance and the sort of metaphysical hierarchy. And that was something I was really searching for. So these are very practical, pragmatic tools. I'm super grateful for them. So what else is possible now? So there is one prerequisite for the 2.5 day talk to the entity, and that is access bars. So there is that one prerequisite. So if you haven't had an access bars class, I can also give you information of getting that prerequisite. And there is an online one you can take that won't make you a bars facilitator, but fulfills the prerequisite for taking classes. Cool. So we're going to wrap it up, but is there any comments anybody has right now? No big questions, because we're gonna close it up. But
Yeah,
yes.
one last question. Is the God is also entity?
Pardon?
Is God is also entity?
That's a great question. That is a great question. Ashwan, you've got a lot of brilliant questions. So, and you may already, I'm not asking this question to disempower at all, but are you aware you have your own personal conversation going on with consciousness? And what if, when you ask a question like, is God an entity? What is God? You will start to receive information and awareness around perceiving that, right? Like I don't have an answer, but you do have these brilliant questions, and all of consciousness would like to contribute to you having awareness around everything you're curious about. So, you know, we can, like in a 2.5 day, I might ask you more questions about what you know about that. it's a bigger conversation than for the taster, but that's where I would start. Just put it out there. Like for me, I go, hey, all right, consciousness, everything that it is, like, show me what true allowance is. What is it? How can I be more of it? But show me what it is. Show me. And every time I've ever asked a question like that, I begin to have these things show up in my life. I get these awarenesses, and the awareness of it shows up, usually not like I imagined at all, but it every single time I've ever engaged with all of the universe in that way, I always get more awareness and information. So begin with that. And if you do the 2.5 day, we can talk more about it. But yes, what do you know about that? And what can you ask and receive? Thank you. Anyone else? All right, awesome. Thank you all so much for showing up and being here together with all of us today. And for all of you who are not able to join us online, first, I apologize that there was a snafu with a link. I didn't change it, but I did send a new one. So thank you for those of you who got it and got it on. I apologize for those of you who weren't able to connect, and for those of you who are waiting for the recording. I've been including your energy. There's no time and no space. And I'm grateful for each one of you and your willingness to explore your awareness with this. And yeah, be the gift that you are. You're welcome, Suzanne. Thanks for showing up, and thank you guys for showing up in the middle of the night.
Thank you.
So grateful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.